What's a recession indicator you've noticed? That's the question that's been circulating online lately. And people have answered with everything from fewer grocery items in shopping carts to shorter restaurant menus to more adults moving back in with their parents. But one answer in particular kept resurfacing over and over again. You can see celebrities' ribs again. And the thing is, as unserious as that sounds at first, historically speaking, it's actually not wrong. Because beauty standards don't exist separately from the economy. They don't exist separately from politics, or fear, or instability, or collective anxiety. Beauty trends are often treated like random aesthetic shifts, as if society collectively wakes up one morning and decides, actually, this year we like thin eyebrows again, or this year we like Pilates bodies, this year we're done with BBLs. Beauty standards rarely emerge out of nowhere. They reflect what a culture fears, what it admires, what it wants to control, and what kind of body feels morally acceptable during moments of uncertainty. And right now, we're watching thinness return with almost surgical precision. The hyper curvy Instagram body that dominated the late 2010s is quietly disappearing. Ozempic and Wegovy are reshaping celebrity bodies almost overnight. Quiet luxury has replaced flashy excess. Minimalism is back. Tiny portions are aspirational again. Clean eating has become moralized. And celebrity bodies are becoming visibly smaller. Again. And historically, that matters. Because periods of economic anxiety have a strange habit of producing beauty standards centered around restraint, discipline, and controlled consumption. So today, we're talking about recession aesthetics, the return of thinness, the politics of appetite, and why unstable societies keep asking women's bodies to shrink. Let's get into it. To understand why thinness is returning, we first have to understand what came before it. Because the beauty culture of the late 2010s and early 2020s was built around excess. Excess hair, excess lashes, excess curves, excess consumption, excess visibility. The dominant beauty ideal wasn't subtle, it was exaggerated. The Kardashian era helped normalize a body aesthetic built around dramatic proportions: tiny waist, large hips, large breasts, full lips, heavily contoured faces, visible cosmetic procedures. And importantly, this beauty ideal emerged during an era obsessed with visibility. Instagram rewarded spectacle. The algorithm rewarded exaggeration. Bodies became branding. Cultural theorist Guy Debord, in The Society of the Spectacle, argued that modern life increasingly transforms human identity into performance, and social media accelerated that process to an almost grotesque degree. Bodies stopped being private, they became public economic assets. The body became content, and in many ways, the BBL era reflected the economic mood of the 2010s: consumer optimism, hypervisibility, luxury branding, conspicuous consumption. Economist Thorstein Veblen described this phenomenon back in 1899 as conspicuous consumption, the public display of wealth through visible excess, and the body itself became part of that display. The message wasn't restraint, it was abundance. But then something shifted, quietly at first, then all at once. Suddenly, celebrity bodies started changing. Faces became sharper, frames became narrower, collarbones became visible again. The exaggerated Instagram body started disappearing almost overnight. And then came Ozempic. Originally developed for diabetes treatment, medications like Ozempic and Wegovy quickly became wrapped up in celebrity culture, wealth signaling, and rapid weight loss speculation. And what's fascinating isn't simply that celebrities are losing weight, it's how culturally acceptable appetite suppression has become again. That's important, because for several years, mainstream culture at least appeared to move toward body positivity and anti diet rhetoric, and yet underneath that, thinness never actually lost its cultural power. Sociologist Sabrina Strings, in Fearing the Black Body, argues that Western fat phobia has always been deeply tied to morality, race, class, and self control, not simply aesthetics. Thinness became associated with discipline, purity, restraint, intelligence, wealth, and superiority, while larger bodies were increasingly framed as evidence of excess, laziness, lack of control, or moral failure. And during periods of instability, societies often become obsessed with control. That's the key. Because recessions are psychologically moralizing periods. People become suspicious of indulgence, suspicious of waste, suspicious of visible excess, and bodies begin reflecting that anxiety. Suddenly, smallness feels responsible, restraint feels intelligent, minimalism feels morally superior. Even beauty starts behaving like austerity politics. The relationship between thinness and morality runs much deeper than modern diet culture. Historian Peter Stearns notes that modern dieting culture exploded during the late 19th and early 20th centuries, particularly in industrialized societies increasingly obsessed with self control, productivity, and discipline. As capitalism evolved, appetite itself became suspicious. Hunger became something to conquer, desire became something to regulate, and women's bodies became one of the primary sites where this discipline played out. Susan Bordeaux, in Unbearable Weight, argues that the modern thin ideal reflects broader systems of social control. She describes slenderness as a metaphor for the controlled, contained, and disciplined self. And honestly, that line explains almost everything, because thinness has rarely been sold as simply attractive. It's sold as evidence of mastery, mastery over appetite, mastery over emotion, mastery over indulgence, mastery over the body itself. And that messaging becomes especially intense during unstable periods. During the Victorian era, restraint became a moral virtue. Women were expected to appear delicate, controlled, refined, almost ethereal. Appetite, especially female appetite, became socially threatening. Women who consumed too much, desired too much, occupied too much space, or displayed excessive pleasure were often portrayed as morally suspect, and those ideas never fully disappeared. They just evolved. French philosopher Michel Foucault argued that modern societies maintain control not simply through laws or punishment, but through discipline imposed onto the body. People learn to regulate themselves, to monitor themselves, shrink themselves, correct themselves. And beauty culture became one of the most effective delivery systems for that discipline, especially for women, because beauty standards often function as social obedience disguised as self improvement. Now let's zoom out for a second, because this isn't just about bodies, it's about aesthetics overall. Look at what's happening culturally right now. Neutral colors, minimal makeup, clean girl beauty, understated luxury, Pilates aesthetics, capsule wardrobes, slicked back buns, beige interiors, tiny jewelry, quiet wealth, old money fashion. Even cosmetic procedures have become quieter. The ideal is no longer look expensive, it's look effortlessly expensive. And there's a difference. Because in unstable economies, overt displays of wealth often become socially uncomfortable. Luxury stops wanting to look loud, it wants to look controlled. Sociologist Pierre Bourdieu wrote extensively about how upper classes distinguish themselves not simply through wealth, but through restraint. True status, according to Bourdieu, often appears effortless. And that's exactly what modern luxury aesthetics are selling, the illusion of effortless perfection. Not flashy wealth, invisible wealth. And thinness fits beautifully into that system. Because extreme thinness, especially the kind maintained through expensive wellness routines, boutique fitness classes, personal chefs, cosmetic procedures, and pharmaceuticals, quietly signals privilege. The body becomes evidence of resources. And ironically, the natural look is often the most expensive look of all. One of the most unsettling parts of this cultural shift is how strongly it echoes the 1990s. Because the 1990s were also marked by economic uncertainty, cultural pessimism, political distrust, and widespread social anxiety. And aesthetically, the era became obsessed with fragility. Heroin chic emerged as the dominant beauty ideal. Sunken eyes, visible bones, pale skin, extreme thinness, exhaustion as aesthetic. Fashion photography became darker, more detached, more emotionally cold. The supermodel era of glossy abundance gave way to bodies that looked fragile, vulnerable, almost consumed by life itself. Cultural critics at the time argued that heroin chic reflected broader feelings of nihilism and alienation. And honestly, that's what makes beauty trends historically fascinating. They often reveal emotional truths about a society before people consciously recognize them, because beauty culture acts like a psychological mood board. And today's mood board looks anxious. It looks restrained, controlled, economically cautious, emotionally exhausted. Even wellness culture reflects this. Everything is optimization now: gut health, hormone balancing, step counts, sleep scores, biohacking, clean eating, intermittent fasting. Health no longer feels restorative, it feels managerial. Sociologist Nicholas Ross described this phenomenon as the rise of the self managing individual, a culture where people are expected to constantly optimize themselves physically, emotionally, and economically. The body becomes a project, and in unstable times, that project intensifies. And now we arrive at Ozempic, or more specifically, what Ozempic represents culturally. Because this isn't just about a medication, it's about the return of appetite suppression as aspiration. For years, mainstream culture publicly rejected extreme dieting language, but suddenly, rapid thinness is glamorous again. Quietly at first, then openly. And what's striking is how quickly society normalized it. The conversation shifted almost immediately from, is this dangerous, to, how do I get access to it? And underneath all of this is a very old cultural fantasy: the fantasy of conquering hunger. Historian Louise Foxcroft, in Calories and Corsets, documents centuries of appetite suppression in beauty culture: Victorian fasting practices, cigarette dieting campaigns, amphetamine weight loss, slimming tonics, dangerous tapeworm pills, starvation framed as elegance. The methods change, the obsession doesn't. Because thinness has long been associated with transcendence, the idea that disciplined people rise above bodily desire. And during periods of instability, that fantasy becomes especially seductive. If the economy feels chaotic, if politics feel chaotic, if the future feels chaotic, then controlling the body can feel emotionally stabilizing, even if it's destructive. And this pattern shows up repeatedly throughout history. During wartime rationing, beauty ideals often become restrained and practical. During economic depressions, extravagance becomes socially suspect. During politically conservative periods, femininity often becomes smaller, quieter, more controlled. Beauty tightens during instability, it hardens, and women's bodies frequently become symbolic battlegrounds where societies project fears about morality, consumption, class, discipline, and national identity. Naomi Wolf argued in The Beauty Myth that beauty standards intensify precisely when women gain greater visibility and freedom. Beauty becomes backlash, and maybe that's part of what we're seeing now, too. Because the current return to thinness isn't happening in isolation. It's happening alongside economic anxiety, housing crisis, rising conservatism, post pandemic instability, burnout culture, surveillance culture, and growing pressure to optimize every aspect of existence. And in moments like this, beauty standards often stop asking women to flourish. They ask women to control themselves, to discipline themselves, to reduce themselves, to take up less space, physically, emotionally, economically. The ideal body during unstable periods is often not the happiest body, it's the most controlled body. Maybe recession beauty isn't really about looking rich. Maybe it's about looking controlled. Controlled appetite, controlled consumption, controlled femininity, controlled bodies. Because every time society becomes unstable, beauty seems to circle back to the same question: how small can you make yourself before the world feels safe again? And maybe that's why seeing celebrity ribs suddenly feels culturally significant. Not because ribs themselves matter, but because they signal something larger: a society becoming anxious again, restrained again, moralizing again. Beauty trends are never just beauty trends, they are emotional weather reports. And the current forecast looks a lot like austerity. We have come to the end of the episode. If you enjoyed this episode of Beauty Unlocked, don't forget to follow the show on your favorite podcast platform. And if you'd like to support the podcast, rating and reviewing the show really does help more than you probably realize. Until next time, my love buckets, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and remember to stay curious always. Bye.
Make it clap, clap, clap. Make it clap, clap. Make it clap, clap. Make it clap, clap. Make it clap.